Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're pulling back the curtain on something that affects pretty much all of us every day. Social influence. You know, those forces that kind of guide our decisions, our behavior, and especially how they get, well, amplified on social media.
Yeah, and we've got some really interesting stuff from you to dig into here. There's a systematic review looking at social media influencers and health impacts, plus insights from like a really major book on persuasion psychology and some related talks too.
Right.
So the plan is basically to unpack all this, figure out how influence works, how social media uses it, and, maybe how you can get a handle on it.
Think of it as your shortcut to getting clued in on these invisible nudges shaping things. Let's get into it.
Okay, so the core idea, really, from the sources is that our brains love efficiency. We run on autopilot a lot, right?
Yeah.
Using these automatic responses triggered by certain things. The book calls it click-whir.
Click-whir, like a machine.
Sort of, yeah, like a pre-programmed tape. Something triggers it, click, and the standard behavior just plays out.
Okay, I think I get it. Like shortcuts. The classic expensive equals good thing, maybe. High price click. Must be quality whir.
Exactly. That turquoise jewelry example is perfect. Couldn't sell it, they accidentally double the price, and boom, it sells out.
Yeah. Or that Xerox machine study. Just using the word because made people way more likely to let someone cut in line.
Right.
Even if the reason was totally meaningless, like because I need to make copies.
It's just the word because, the trigger. It saves mental energy most of the time, but yeah, it leaves us open, predictable.
Vulnerable, even.
Totally. And this predictability, these shortcuts, that's what influence pros learn to tap into. The sources lay out these key principles, these triggers for our click-whir responses. Things like reciprocation, commitment, and consistency, social proof.
Okay, let's start with reciprocation. That feels really basic, right?
Okay.
This deep need to repay favors.
It's huge, a super powerful social rule. And what's wild is how it can create debts we never asked for. Like that professor sending Christmas cards to random strangers and getting tons back. People just felt they had to reciprocate, even though they had no idea who he was. Or, those free address labels charities send out.
Ah, right. Suddenly you feel like you owe them a donation.
Exactly, it works. Even the Hare Krishnas giving out unwanted flowers in airports, people donated just to cancel the debt, even if they threw the flower away right after.
Wow, okay.
And then there's the rejection then retreat tactic. That uses reciprocity too, but cleverly.
That's the one where you ask for something massive first, knowing they'll say no.
Yep.
And then you ask for what you really wanted, which now seems reasonable.
Precisely. You made a concession by retreating, so they feel this pull to make a concession too, by saying yes to the smaller thing. The book mentions Liddy's crazy initial Watergate plans.
Right, making the final plan seem almost sensible in comparison.
Yeah, and salespeople do this all the time. Start high, then concede to the price they aim for anyway.
And the kicker is, the sources say people are often happier with the deal then.
Yeah, because they feel like they influenced it, like they drove a hard bargain. Makes them more likely to stick with it too.
So how do you defend against that?
Well, awareness is key. Recognize that first big request might just be a setup. If you see the concession as a tactic, not a real favor, that feeling of obligation kind of just evaporates.
Gotcha. Okay, next up, commitment and consistency. Our need to stick with what we've already said or done.
Exactly, especially if that commitment was active, public, or written down. It's tied so strongly to how we see ourselves. Once you take a stand, even a tiny one,
you feel this pressure to act consistently with it.
Huge pressure, yeah. Internally and externally. The sources mention the POW example from the Korean War, starting with really small anti-capitalist statements, then slowly escalating. Writing it down makes it stronger.
That must be why people announce they're quitting smoking or something. Makes it public.
Absolutely. Public commitment adds accountability. Toy companies even exploit this, apparently. They'll advertise a hot toy before Christmas, but not supply enough.
Oh, that's sneaky.
Yeah. So parents promise it, can't find it, buy other stuff. Then after Christmas, the toy magically appears, and the parents feel obligated to buy that too, to keep their promise.
Wow. And this links to things like initiation rites too.
Yeah.
Like fraternities or the military.
Definitely. The tougher the initiation, the more value you place on the group, the more committed you become. You have to justify the effort.
Right.
And then there's the lowball. Classic car sales tactic.
Where they get you to agree to a great deal, you commit mentally, maybe fill out forms, and then suddenly, oh, sorry, the manager won't approve that price. Or they add fees.
Exactly. The initial advantage is gone, but you often stick with it because you've already committed and started building reasons why it's a good decision anyway. Like that Iowa energy study, people committed publicly to save energy just to get their name in the paper.
And they kept doing it even after the publicity stopped.
They did, and saved even more energy. The commitment became internal.
So the defense is listening to your gut when it feels like you're being trapped by consistency.
Pretty much. The sources talk about that stomach-tightening feeling. If the deal changes after you commit, you gotta feel okay about walking away. Don't be consistent just for consistency's sake if it's unfair.
All right. Principle number 3, social proof. Basically, follow the herd.
Yeah, looking to others to figure out what's right, especially when things are uncertain. If everyone else is doing it,
It must be okay.
ow.
This explains that bystander effect thing, right? In emergencies.
Totally. Pluralistic ignorance. Everyone's looking around, seeing nobody else reacting, so they assume it's not serious, even if it is. The Kitty Genovese case is the tragic, classic example.
And the advice there is, if you need help, single someone out. Point at them. Tell them what to do.
Right, breaks the spell. And similarity really amps up social proof. We copy people who seem like us. That lost wallet study showed people were more likely to return it if they thought the previous finder was similar to them.
Huh. Makes sense. Like kids learning to swim by watching other kids, not just adults.
Exactly. But there's a dark side too, the Werther effect.
Oh, right. The copycat suicides after a publicized one.
Yeah, disturbingly, studies show spikes not just in suicides, but even in things like single-driver car crashes or private plane crashes that seem to mimic the method after a big story. It's like, tragically, the publicity makes it seem more of an option.
That's deeply unsettling. And then there's deliberately faked social proof.
Oh, all over the place. Canned laughter on TV shows, even though we know it's fake, it still makes us perceive the show as funnier.
Right.
Those unrehearsed interview ads that are obviously scripted, bartenders putting their own money in the tip jar to start things off.
Right? Salting the tip jar.
Yeah. Hiring people to clap at performances clacking. It's all designed to make something seem more popular or accepted than it is. Defense. Be skeptical. If the proof seems a bit too perfect or clearly manufactured, question it.
Okay, that leads nicely into liking. We just say yes more often to people we like. It seems obvious, but
It's incredibly powerful. And the sources break down why we like people. Looks matter. Attractive people are automatically seen as kinder, smarter. Similarity is huge. Salespeople finding common ground, even just subtly mirroring your body language.
compliments work too, right?
Yeah.
Even if they feel a bit transparent.
Apparently so. That car salesman, Joe Girard, sending out cards saying, "I like you," to thousands of past customers sounds cheesy, but it worked. And then there's contact and cooperation.
But contact alone isn't enough, is it? Like, putting rival groups together can just make things worse.
Exactly. Contact under negative conditions like competition breeds hostility. Think desegregated schools initially. But contact where people have to cooperate towards a common goal, that builds liking significantly. The jigsaw classroom method is a great example.
Where kids each have a piece of the puzzle and have to work together.
Right. And good cop, bad cop that uses liking through contrast. The bad cop makes you dislike them, so the good cop seems like your ally, much more likable.
Making you want to cooperate with the good cop.
Yep. And then there's the principle of association, linking things.
Like putting attractive models next to cars in ads.
Exactly. It's not logical, but the positive feelings we have towards the model just rub off onto the car. It's why companies sponsor the Olympics or link products to popular trends. We even do it to ourselves.
How so?
Sports fans, when the team wins, it's we won. When they lose, it's usually they lost. We want to associate ourselves with success, bask in that reflected glory. Even blaming the weather reporter for bad weather, it's just association.
Crazy. Okay, so defending against liking. How do we do that?
The advice is recognize when you've started liking the person, maybe more than you'd expect. Then consciously make an effort to separate your feelings about the person from the request they're making. Judge the deal on its own merits.
Okay, authority. This one feels heavier. The Milgram experiments and all that.
Yeah, it's powerful. Our tendency to obey authority figures is deeply ingrained. Milgram showed people would administer seemingly painful shocks just because a guy in a lab coat told them to.
And it happens in real life. That scary medical error example, the rectal earache.
Right. A nurse followed a nonsensical prescription because, well, the doctor wrote it. Unquestioning obedience can be dangerous.
And it's not just actual authority, it's the symbols too, right? Titles, uniforms.
Absolutely. Just a title like professor or wearing a uniform can trigger automatic deference. Think about scams involving fake bank examiners or inspectors. Even an actor playing a doctor in an ad lends the product authority, even though we know they're not really a doctor.
So the authority doesn't even need to be real, just look the part.
Often, yeah. Or think of the waiter who builds trust, establishes himself as a helpful guide. A sort of benign authority, maybe, by recommending cheaper items first before steering you towards the expensive wine.
Okay, so how do we guard against being overly obedient?
The sources suggest asking two key questions. First, is this authority actually an expert in this specific situation? Is their authority relevant here? Second, how trustworthy can we expect this expert to be? Do they have something to gain personally from our compliance?
Makes sense. Question the legitimacy and the trustworthiness. Okay, last one. Scarcity. Things are more attractive when they're hard to get.
Limited time only. Going fast. Only 3 left. It works because of psychological reactance. We hate having our choices limited.
It's like telling a toddler, no, don't touch that.
Exactly. Suddenly, it's the only thing they want. It's the Romeo and Juliet effect, parental opposition, making the romance seem more precious. Censorship often backfires for the same reason, making forbidden information seem more desirable, like that study where students wanted a book more just because it had an age restriction.
Or juries focusing more on evidence they were told to disregard.
Right. The scarcity of the information makes it seem more valuable. And the sources note that new scarcity is more powerful than something that was always scarce.
Like those cookies in the experiment.
Yeah. Cookies were rated as tastier and more desirable if the jar suddenly went from full to nearly empty, compared to cookies from a jar that only ever had a few. It's the loss of availability that really motivates us. And competition makes scarce things even more desirable. Auctions, housing markets, seeing other people interested in the same thing.
Breeds that frenzy. So how do we resist the must-have-it-now feeling?
Recognize the feeling itself. That little rush of excitement or panic when something is scarce. Use that as a signal. Stop. Ask yourself, do I want this because of its actual merits, its usefulness to me? Or do I just want it because it's rare or time-limited? Try to separate the scarcity buzz from the item's real value.
Okay, wow. So those are the core principles. Now, social media. This feels like where all these things just get put on steroids, right? Based on that review and the talks.
Oh, absolutely. Social media platforms are almost perfectly designed environments for these principles to thrive, often automatically. Take social proof and liking. Influencers, well, their whole existence is built on it.
Follower counts, likes, comments, it's all right there.
Yeah.
Visible proof.
Exactly. Huge, quantifiable social proof staring you in the face. And their content. Carefully curated to maximize liking, attractive images, aspirational stuff, seeming relatable, engaging directly with comments.
And the algorithms feed into that, right?
Yeah.
They see the engagement, the likes.
And treat it as more social proof, showing the popular stuff to even more people. It's a massive feedback loop. The platform itself is constantly reinforcing what seems popular or liked.
Okay, what about reciprocity? How does that play out?
Well, influencers, creators, they give away content constantly, right? Entertainment, advice, information, glimpses into their lives, it's free. But it builds that subtle sense of obligation. You consume, you enjoy, and there's this quiet pressure to give back with a like, a follow, engagement, or eventually maybe buying something they recommend.
So commitment and consistency. How does that work online?
Every little interaction is a micro-commitment. Liking a post, sharing something, leaving a comment. It's a small public or semi-public step, aligning yourself with that influencer or idea.
Which makes you more likely to keep doing it.
Yeah, more likely to follow them consistently, agree with their future posts, and ultimately act in line with their recommendations, like buying that product they keep talking about.
Yeah.
You want to be consistent with those earlier, smaller commitments.
And scarcity is just everywhere. Flash sales, limited drops.
Totally. Link in bio, 24 hours only. Exclusive access for followers. It's tailor-made for the fast scroll, the fear of missing out.
And authority. How do influencers get that?
Sometimes it's genuine expertise, but often it's just perceived authority based on their huge following, which the platform visually confirms.
Yeah.
If someone has millions of followers talking about skincare, they seem like an authority, even without, dermatology credentials.
Okay, so that systematic review you looked at zeroed in on influencers and health impacts. What did it actually find?
Right. It pulled together 12 studies. One finding that really stood out was influencers promoting unhealthy foods. It led to kids immediately eating more calories from snacks.
Okay, that's worrying, but maybe not surprising.
But here's the weird twist. if the influencer promoting the unhealthy food looked, well, unhealthy themselves, it actually made the kids prefer healthy snacks more.
Seriously, that is counterintuitive, like a negative role model effect.
Maybe. It's odd. But promoting vegetables didn't seem to move the needle either way in the studies they looked at.
Huh, okay. What about other areas, like body image?
That was much more consistent and consistently negative. Seeing those idealized influencer bodies, it reliably had a bad impact on viewers' body image and mood.
And the review said it wasn't just influencers causing that feeling, right?
Exactly. When it came to idealized images of motherhood, seeing those posts caused anxiety and envy. But it didn't matter if it came from a big influencer or just an everyday mom posting her perfect moments.
So it's the content, the constant stream of perfection that's the problem, more than who's posting it.
Seems like it. The relentless comparison to highlight reels. But on the upside, the review did find some evidence that public health campaigns using influencers could actually lead to positive behavior changes.
Like what?
Like getting people to adopt better hygiene habits during COVID or flu season. So it can be used for good. But a really important caveat from the review is that lots of the studies in this whole area aren't great, methodologically speaking.
So we need better research, basically.
Definitely. Need more solid data to be sure about a lot of this.
And then that connects to what those TEDx talks were saying, too, about the downsides, especially for young people.
Yeah, one talk really hit on that insecurity thing, comparing your messy reality to everything else's curated perfection, the dark side, as they called it. Another mentioned the stress, the anxiety, even like withdrawal symptoms from using social media too much.
But didn't one talk argue it's not the platform itself that's inherently evil?
Right, that was the counterpoint. Social media isn't necessarily bad, it's how you use it.
Yeah.
And critically, remembering that the algorithms learn from you.
They feed you more of whatever you click on, linger on, engage with.
Exactly. So if you're constantly drawn to stuff that makes you feel bad, you'll just get more of it. But the flip side is also true. If you consciously engage with positive stuff, things aligned with your goals, uplifting content.
The algorithm will start showing you more of that.
Precisely. Which leads us right into, okay, what do we do about all this? How do we navigate this world of constant influence, especially online?
What do the sources suggest?
Well, the absolute number one thing, echoing the core book, is just awareness. Recognizing those click whir responses in yourself. Actively noticing, okay, that's scarcity talking, or, am I agreeing just because I like this person?
Just putting a name to it weakens its hold.
It really does. Be alert for the obvious tricks. The clearly fake social proof, the irrelevant authority symbols, that sudden manufactured urgency.
I'm then trying to separate the message from the messenger.
Yes. Critically important. Try to evaluate the actual request, the product, the idea on its own merits, not based on whether you feel obligated or like the person or because it seems scarce or popular. And specifically for social media, like those talks said, be mindful. Choose what you consume.
Take control of your feed. Unfollow accounts that bring you down. Actively seek out and engage with ones that lift you up or help you learn.
Right, knowing that the algorithm will respond to those choices. And maybe develop some strategies beforehand, like how will you handle seeing content that triggers envy? What's your coping mechanism? It's about reclaiming some agency.
So summing up, these deep psychological principles are always working on us, often below our conscious radar. And social media is like this incredibly potent amplifier for all of them.
It really is. But I think the hopeful message from digging into all this isn't just, wow, influence is powerful. It's that understanding how it works gives you back a degree of control. Recognizing the nudge, seeing the mechanism, it lets you hit pause on the automatic whir.
Lets you step back and decide for yourself.
Yeah. Make a conscious choice based on what you actually value, what your goals are. Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe. In a world increasingly designed for these automatic clicks and whirs, what does it really take to stay informed, act autonomously, and make choices that are truly our own?
Something to definitely think about next time you're scrolling. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.